Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. Today, we are going to try to shift how you think about your own mind.
Okay.
And it's going to be a little bit techy, but I think it's really going to resonate with a lot of you.
Awesome. I'm excited.
So have you ever had to, like, troubleshoot your computer or,
Oh, yeah.
something's not working right and you
Absolutely.
can't get in there and fix
Yeah,
it?
you get that spinning wheel of death or,
Exactly.
the blue screen.
But you wish you could just get in there and have more control.
Right.
Well, that's kind of what we're talking about today. But
Okay.
for your mind,
Interesting.
it's like, how can you run as administrator
I like that.
inside your own head?
So we're talking about mental permissions.
Yes. Elevating your mental permissions so you can get in there and make those changes and really kind of
Bypass some of those limitations.
exactly bypass those limitations.
Okay.
And, we're not talking about just like positive thinking or,
Right.
quick fixes. We're going deep today.
Yeah.
We've got research articles. We've got the books from, personal effectiveness to neuroscience. So
It's going to be a rich one.
it is going to be a really rich, deep dive. And what we want to do is really help you, the listener, figure out how can you access that administrator level of control.
That's a great question because so often I think people feel like they're run by their minds.
Yes.
More than they are running their minds.
Absolutely. And it's like the world is
Yeah.
happening to us instead of us, being able to shape the world around us.
So much is on autopilot. And I
Sure.
think that's the feeling of not having administrator access.
Yes. And, we have to kind of accept the way things are, but we also have the power to change.
Right.
And I think there's this interesting tension there that we're going to explore.
Awesome.
Okay. So to kick things off, I want to talk about this BBC News report
Okay.
that talks about meditation
Right.
and how meditation can actually lead to visible changes in the brain in as little as 6 weeks.
Wow. That's pretty incredible.
I know.
Yeah.
And that's huge. That means that something as simple as, sitting and focusing on your breath
Right.
can actually restructure your brain.
That's neuroplasticity in action, right?
Exactly.
Like that's really showing us that our brains aren't fixed. They're
Yeah.
constantly being shaped. And this report is saying, hey, just 6 weeks of meditation and you can visibly see a difference.
And it's not just like, a random difference. It's strengthening the areas that are associated with focus and emotional regulation.
Which is exactly what we need to be able to
I know. Wow.
access that administrator level of control.
Okay, so then there's this book called Rewire Your Brain.
Okay.
Have you heard of that one?
Yes, I have. I'm familiar.
Okay, so they talk about this principle that cells that fire together wire together.
Yeah, Hebs ruled the classic.
So that basically means that the more you think or feel something, the stronger that pathway in your brain becomes.
Totally. It's like, if you're constantly going down the same path in the woods, that's going to get more and more worn in and easier to travel down.
Yes, exactly. And so this can be good or bad.
Exactly right, because it means that those, positive thoughts, those great habits
Yeah.
can get really wired in, but then also those negative thought patterns and the bad habits and the things we want to get rid of, those can also become
Yes.
very deeply entrenched.
So how do we rewire
Right.
to the positive?
So this is where I think that Rewire Your Brain book is so helpful.
Okay.
Because they introduced this framework called the FEED method.
Feed.
Yeah, it stands for focus, effort, effortlessness, and determination.
Okay, I like that. Focus, effort, effortlessness, and determination.
Yeah, so it's basically like a recipe for building new mental pathways for really taking control of that wiring process.
So you're not just like passively letting your brain
No.
do its thing. You're actively
Exactly.
shaping it.
You are the administrator. You're going in and saying, like, I want this program. I don't want this one. Let's install this update.
Okay, so break down the VEED method for me.
All right, so focus, that's like first and foremost, you have to be able to direct your attention to the thoughts or the behaviors that you want to cultivate.
Okay.
And then effort, that's the part where you actually have to put in the work.
Yeah.
Especially at the beginning when it feels really unnatural
Right.
to be thinking this new way or behaving in this new way.
Yes, it's like learning a new language or
Totally.
learning a new skill.
It takes effort at first, but then...
Awkward and clumsy at first.
Yeah, but then there's effortlessness. And that's not saying that you don't have to put in any effort.
Right.
But it's the stage where as you practice and as you repeat, those neural pathways get stronger. And it starts to become more and more automatic, more effortless.
Okay, so it's like that initial effort leads to
Exactly.
effortlessness over time.
Yeah, exactly. It becomes second nature. It becomes your default setting.
Okay, I love that. And then determination. That's like
Determination.
the key ingredient.
It is, because you're going to hit roadblocks. You're
Yeah.
going to, have days where you don't want to do it.
Uh-huh.
But that determination to stick with it, to
Yeah.
keep practicing, that's what's ultimately going to lead to lasting change.
Okay, and this whole idea of being proactive and really taking control of our responses.
Yeah,
It reminds me of the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
absolutely. That's a classic for a reason.
And that book really emphasizes being proactive.
Right?
Yeah.
Right, like not just being reactive to whatever's happening around you, but actually choosing how you're going to respond.
And so if we kind of connect this back to our,
Yeah.
administrator metaphor, it's like,
Yeah.
okay, you've got all these prompts coming in from
Right.
your internal and external world, and you can either just let those prompts run the show, or you could be proactive and choose how you're going to respond.
Yeah, I love that it's like you're overriding the default settings of just being reactive and installing this new program of intentionality.
Okay, so then there's Awaken the Giant Within.
All right.
Now, this book gets into some, really practical techniques,
Yeah.
specifically NLP.
Okay, neuro-linguistic programming.
Yes.
What's so great about this book is it's not just theory. It's like, okay, here's how you actually do it.
Okay.
Like, here are the steps you can take to change your thinking, to change your behavior.
And so for someone listening who's thinking,
Yeah.
okay, this all sounds great, but how do I actually put this into practice?
Right.
This book can really help.
Exactly, because NLP is really all about the connection between our thoughts, our language, and our behavior. And so it gives you these tools to understand how those things are all interconnected and then to actually change them.
And it's like it gives you the command line interface to your own mind so you can really get in there and start.
I love that analogy because it's like you're not just using the, the basic user interface anymore. You're actually getting under the hood.
Okay, so then there's this book, You're a Badass.
Okay.
Now, this one takes a very different approach.
All right. How so?
It's much more direct. It's often humorous. And it's really about tackling self-doubt.
Okay. Because that self-doubt can really hold us back.
Or absolutely. It's like a virus that can infect our whole system.
Totally. It can really limit our access to our full potential.
And so this book helps us to kind of identify those negative beliefs.
Yeah.
And then dismantle them so we can step into a more empowered state.
And that's crucial for being able to run as admin, right? Because if you're constantly second-guessing yourself, if you don't believe in your own abilities, then you're never going to
step into that role.
Take those actions.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about all these different books and ideas, and it seems like a really crucial prerequisite to all of this is
What's that?
self-awareness. Oh, absolutely.
Like you can't run as admin if you don't know what programs are even running in the background.
You got to know what you're working with. You got to know what your default settings are.
Yes, and so there's this CSU blog on habit formation that talks about the importance of recognizing the cues and triggers that drive our automatic behaviors.
It's like becoming aware of the lines of code that are running in the background.
Yes, exactly. And until you see those lines of code, you can't change them.
You can't rewrite them.
You can't rewrite them. And there's this life hack article that suggests an interesting exercise, which is writing a letter to your future self.
Okay.
And that might seem kind of unrelated, but it's actually a really powerful way to gain clarity on your internal operating system.
How so?
Because you're basically taking a snapshot of your current mental landscape, your default settings, and then you're looking at your aspirations and saying, okay, here's where I want to be.
It's like defining the upgrade that you want to make.
Exactly. And then there are things like decluttering your environment that can actually help with this too.
Totally, because a cluttered external environment can often lead to a cluttered internal environment.
And so by clearing your space, you can actually clear your mind.
It's like creating more mental RAM.
Okay, so now we've got this awareness.
Right.
But how do we actually translate that into action?
Okay.
And so the book, The Power of Habit, talks about the habit loop.
Okay, I'm familiar.
Which is cue, routine, reward.
Yeah.
And so once you understand that sequence, you can actually start to intervene.
Right.
And rewrite those automatic routines.
So you're basically identifying the faulty subroutine and then figuring out how to recode it.
Okay. So for example, let's say your cue is you get home from work.
Okay.
You're stressed. Your routine is you grab a bag of chips and you sit down on the couch and you watch TV.
Okay.
Your reward is you feel a little bit better in the moment.
Yeah, you get that dopamine hit.
Right. But maybe that's not the reward that you ultimately want.
Exactly.
And so you can start to say, okay.
So how would you rewrite that?
Well, instead of grabbing the chips,
yeah,
maybe I go for a walk.
Oh.
Or maybe I call a friend. Or maybe I, do something creative.
So you're changing the routine.
Exactly. I'm changing the routine.
But keeping the cue and the reward.
Well, I'm keeping the cue and I'm changing the reward to something that's more aligned with
your long-term goals. Okay.
And then the Healthline article talks about things like learning a new language.
Okay.
Or playing a musical instrument.
Uh-huh.
And these aren't just fun hobbies.
Right.
They're actually really powerful ways to stimulate neuroplasticity.
They're like brain workouts.
Yes, exactly.
You're building new neural pathways. You're strengthening your cognitive function.
And it's like installing new software on your mental hardware.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
What's the key takeaway?
I think the biggest takeaway is that our brains are not fixed. They're incredibly adaptable, and we have the power to change them.
Through conscious effort.
Through conscious effort, through self-awareness, and through intentional action.
And it's like we all have this amazing computer inside of us.
Yeah.
But we need to learn how to use it.
We need to learn how to run as admin.
Exactly.
Because that's how we unlock our true potential.
You know, thinking about my own life, I can definitely remember times when I felt really stuck. Like I was just trapped in a loop of my own thoughts and emotions. It was so frustrating.
Right, like you're just running the same program over and over again?
Yes, and it felt like I had no control. But learning about things like neuroplasticity and meditation and the habit loop, it's given me so much hope because it's shown me that I'm not a passive passenger.
Exactly.
You know?
You have the keys.
I have the keys.
They just got to get in the driver's seat.
Okay, so for you, the listener, the question I want to leave you with is, where in your life do you need to run as admin?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Think about those areas where you feel like you're constantly battling the same negative thoughts, the same unwanted emotions, or you just feel stuck in those unproductive habits.
Yeah, where do you feel like you're lacking control?
Exactly. Where do you want more agency?
That's a great place to start because then you can really focus your energy on, okay, I want to upgrade this program or I want to uninstall this one.
But this is just the beginning. There's so much more to explore.
Right.
We've just scratched the surface.
We have, and there are so many resources out there.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to learn more about the habit loop, there's The Power of Habit.
Yeah.
There's the CSU blog that we mentioned.
And if you want to learn more about personal growth,
you
know, there's the Life Hack article.
There's platforms like BetterUp that have all these amazing resources.
And if you want to dive deeper into neuroplasticity,
you
know, there's
there's so much out there.
There's so much, so just start exploring.
Exactly.
And remember, the operating system of your mind is not fixed.
You can upgrade it.
You hold the keys to elevate your access.
That's a good one.
All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to another deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
We'll see you next time.
See you later.